Hi, my name is Kim Billington. I'm going to be sharing with you today Module 1 of a three-part series about how to get ready for online play therapy adventures with children and young people. So this first module looks at online considerations and how to create online therapeutic play resources. Modules 2 and 3 will look more about the different creative interventions we can do once we've engaged with the child or young person. I'd like to pay my respects to the people of the Bunurong Nation here in Melbourne. I'm living and working and playing on their lands. Just remember that the counsellor is the most precious and important and influential tool in the toolkit. We don't need a room full of resources. We need to be present, authentic, and still in ourselves so that we can sense what's happening for the child. So any of the interventions that I put forward today, they might not fit for you for a start. They might not fit for the client. So there's a saying that if you get a new hammer, everything looks like a nail. So the urge to go and use that hammer can be quite strong. This is something I usually have at the beginning of sessions with children that are over about 10 or 11. And I just found that on the Wool website. And it's a fun way of introducing how do you feel today. You can talk about that. I can share how I'm feeling. The other thing I like to do is when I'm online, is have a few of these videos that are downloadable just in the PowerPoint app itself. So let's take a moment now. Take a couple of breaths before we begin. So you might have blown bubbles in a session with a child, and this will be a second best, perhaps, once you're online. So these are the 7 components of the first module: safety, privacy, confidentiality, parent contracting and child-centered intake questions for the parent, expectations of parents, the children, or the young person, and what does this child or young person need? To hold that in your mind is quite helpful. And there are some key theoretical principles of playful therapy engagement, which if you're an experienced counsellor, you'll brush over that, you know all about that, but I'll be bringing those in for anyone that's new to work with children. And then we'll finish with how to create your online psych-ed and play resources. So we've got a lot to cover. So safety, we've really got to somehow manage to do this family violence safety assessment. In the parent intake, my first question is, are there any intervention orders? Have there been any intervention orders or breaches? Is there a family court order? And if there is, I say, I like to see those, please, so I can just be aware of what kind of things have happened in the past. Because if there is a family court order that says both parents need to agree to child counselling and you don't get verbal or written consent from the other party, then you're breaking a court order, and that's a really serious offence. So we just need to ask these questions at the beginning. It's really good to get the address where the child will be. So if at the intake, the mum says, oh, sometimes I'll drop the child off at the grandparents for the session. I'll say, well, what's their address? Just in case something goes wrong, I've got the addresses where the child would normally be or the young person would normally be for the sessions. And have a phone number of the adult in that house. So if it's at the grandparents, well, what's your mum's number, So suicide risk assessment. if a parent has had a suicide attempt in the past or been hospitalized, find a way to assess that with your parent, or if it's about the young person. So it becomes quite matter of fact in that first intake with the parent. You know, has your young person, has your child had any struggles with suicidal thoughts in the past? Has anyone else in the family had that kind of problem? Get those kind of backstories right early. People think, oh, you know, it's a bit early, I'm just trying to get to know them. Get them done, get into that. And this is all part of our responsibility in this role, working with families, children and young people. So the other thing is, if you've got that gut feeling that there's somebody else in the room with the child or young person, or, you know, in the house, or even at the intake, if you sense that there's someone else in the room while the parent is giving you some information, you can just ask, who else is at home today? And you know, is there any safe access to nature? Because if there is, say there's a back garden, say, oh, is it fenced in? Is it the kind of thing that I could ask your child to go into the garden and find a twig or something like that? You know, if that's the way you would like to work, you can ask those kind of questions. So yeah, I think the thing is to really think safety. When we're having a client come to our consulting rooms, it's quite different, isn't it? So we have to have a broader picture. So we need some kind of telehealth consent form, and we need it to negotiate. If I'm concerned about your safety or your child's safety, because the parent may have been subject to family violence. So get in early and say, what kind of things do you think you'd like me to do as the next step? Now, they might say, I don't want you to do anything because I'm frightened of him. I say, well, I would have to do something. I can't end a session when I've been told there's some kind of risk around safety. And so we find who I would be able to call. And if they refuse, then I'll say, I might have to do a police welfare check. It's very rare, but those kind of things are the last option. Sometimes children like headphones. And in fact, if somebody else is in the space with the child for reasons, a very small apartment, for example, then headphones are great because the other people don't hear the questions you as the counsellor are asking. And sometimes the child will want the video off. So that's something to negotiate. Well, that's fine. What if we just have it on for part of the session? I'm happy for you to have the video off. So negotiate, lean into it. You obviously want to know why and what's that about. Sometimes children want to eat or walk away from the screen or things like that, of course, just as you might have done when you were little. So there's a couple of links here about the Safety Commissioner, because nowadays we have young people and even sadly, grade 5 and 6 people talking about either being stalked or sent threatening messages or being asked to send a photo that's a bit more revealing, etc. So check out some of these resources. There's a really nice little YouTube about child cyberbullying, which I think you'll find helpful. And the other thing to think about is that Zoom fatigue is real. So if you're transitioning or you've just got a job where all your clients are online, you need to think about what that would do to your body, the biology. So there's a little 60 millisecond delay in the communication, visual, auditory. So how does your brain cope with that? Now, short term, it's fine. But if you're doing this every day, you'll need decent breaks away from the screen to help the brain not be stressed by that. And also, make sure if you're with a child that you have it on, not on gallery view, because in gallery view, you and the young person would be next to each other like that. So select speaker view so that you're at the top smaller when the child's talking. Sometimes I turn off self view, and that's if I'm pretty tired. I'll just turn my self view off, because it's not normal that when you're with a client, you see yourself. And it is actually, it's been researched that it's a distraction. And interestingly, women in particular are drawn to their own image. So again, these things are interesting to think about, and whether they affect you. Also, there's a thing called disinhibition. So, neurotypical people find it less exhausting to be on Zoom, and be very comfortable with it hour after hour. But others will find it either a bit boring, two-dimensional, and those kind of things. But what can happen is you can say more than you want to say. Maybe not as a counsellor, because you're so practiced in kind of monitoring what you're talking about, but people you work with, whether it's the parents or the child or the young people, they may share more than they would normally in session, which could be a good thing. The other thing is I purchased Blue Zero glasses at the beginning of COVID, and they have been my lifesaver. If ever, they're prescription ones, and if ever I put them down and can't find them and have to use my ordinary prescription glasses, I'm telling you, within 2 hours, my eyes are strained with the light. So that's worth thinking about if you're someone that wears glasses. So parent contracting, child-centered intake questions. Often parents want to jump in, don't they, and talk about the problem. Let's jump in first and say, what's wonderful about your child? This is a narrative therapy practice. What are you proud of about your child? And again, there's a couple of YouTubes there that you can look at. And there's a training at the Sydney Centre for Creative Change called Preparing Parents for Child Counselling. So here we are as a counsellor, and we've got our own lived experience of hanging out at school and with teachers having power over us, or being a little kid and having a certain parent or family member, older sibling sometimes, who's not treated as respectfully and rightly. So when we come into contact with parents to do this parent consult, the intake, whatever you want to call it, just be aware of your own responses that are coming up from childhood. We can never do so much therapy that we're completely healed. These things will come up, and over time you'll get to go, oh yes, this parent reminds me of. So parents and teachers might be wanting tips and strategies to solve the problem, and they're pressuring us. They think, you're the expert. But you also, working with children and young people, you need to play and have fun. And it's very therapeutic, and it helps us with our self-care to relax and have fun with the children that we work with. And we want a place where we won't be judged. So if you feel the parents judging you, notice that. So if you're a really experienced practitioner and the parent judges you, could be like water off a duck's back. But if you're new and maybe you're not a parent yet, you're sensitive to that. So there's a lot that goes on in that parent intake session that's worth attending to and going to supervision with. So expectations, that's huge. What level of involvement might that parent want, or that you might want more involvement? Some parents pretty much drop the child off and then that's it. They don't want to spend one moment in the consulting room or on Zoom. They don't want to be present at all. It's all the child or all the 15-year-olds, like, off you go. But we might want more, especially if we've been alerted to something. So we need to say at the beginning, ideally that whole 50 minutes is with your child. and it's their time. But occasionally it might be great to have you jump in for 10 minutes. And how would we negotiate that? Could I text you? Whatever that is. And if the child or young person has had counselling before, that really needs to be talked about, because if the parent has been dissatisfied with something, we need to kind of unpack. Was there too much homework? What was that about? Our expectations of how things go can be tricky on Zoom. As I said, you'll find things happen that don't normally happen. Like the child is logging on and there's no parent to be seen, and it's an 8-year-old or something like that. So you have to think about that and convey that, communicate with the parents. What's your expectation as the counsellor? I prefer not to have emails with parents that I'm working with, because I find that with many, they like to go into lengthy descriptions of what he did, they did, she thought, etc., or what happened. So I say to parents, look, I won't be communicating via email in between sessions. If you have got a series of things you want to convey to me, you're more than welcome to send it on an email the morning of the session. I won't be able to read it before then, but I'll read it before the session. So I might, at 2 minutes to the hour when we had the session, I'll look at the email, but I won't be responding to it. But if it gives me some information that might be helpful, great. If there's a cancellation needed, probably a text message is much better for me. That's what I say. And again, some parents ask about, well, how can this play help and all that? So again, depending on your theoretical approach, you could explain those things. Yeah, and parents with younger children can take the opportunity to observe and learn from the interaction. So sometimes I'll say to the 12-year-old, would it be okay if mum and your 6-year-old brother are on the computer in another room for 10 minutes of your session today, and we can all have a bit of a conversation about what happens at dinner time? Is that okay? Because the person you're working with, the child you're working with, sometimes has some good ideas of how things could be different, So who knows? You can create anything you want. There's a link there to something from Emerging Minds. You can check it out. So coming to counselling is where it's safe to talk about what's troubling you. So if someone says, what is counselling? Well, it's just that. It's where you're safe and you can talk about what's troubling you. So we don't say where we can help fix the problems or anything, just trying to move this up a bit higher. So these are 3 images from a book, my second book, Counselling Conversations. And I can have these images on the screen. So basically, it's good to have a PowerPoint, and we'll get to that later, where there are images that we can talk about. So I might have the first image and say, where do you go to sit in nature or reflect on things? That's mainly for teenagers, these ones. And if you were to, put on the front of a T-shirt what you want the world to know about you, what would that be? And what would be on the back where you don't really want people to see? And it can be on the right, I'd better suit up. So when a child feels afraid, how do you feel you need to protect yourself? That kind of thing. So images are really great. And this is one of the beauties of online counselling. You're not looking at the child all the time. You're both looking at something that you've created in a PowerPoint on the screen. Sometimes you have an intake after the parent intake where it's the parent and the child, because the child's maybe not ready to just have some time with you. So how do you, what do you want to do with that? Well, you can do a pop quiz, and you can say, okay, you have to write down, say you've got a dad and a 10-year-old, say to them, okay, on a piece of paper, they might be in their own spaces on their own laptops or together on one. Don't show the other person. You're going to write down what you think Dad's favorite color is, and Dad, write down what you think your son's favorite color is, and go through those things. Favorite movie, which is their favorite framed family picture, so it's a bit of playfulness straight away. And it gets the parents in particular thinking of the child. How often do we get a parent that's kind of wanting to tell us how it feels for them and how much trouble the child is for them? So in terms of what the child's going to need, or the young person's going to need on the day of the session, they're going to need their device fully charged. A phone really isn't good enough. You want them to be able to interact on the whiteboard. And if you haven't got good whiteboard skills now, if you can't whip up a genogram and annotate on a whiteboard of the different problems a child has, you don't have to type quickly, but to know how to navigate around the Zoom whiteboard, I would suggest you do some kind of course for that. There's a 90-minute one with the Sydney Centre for Creative Change, or you can just go to YouTube and say, how do you annotate on the Zoom whiteboard? Because if you don't use the whiteboard, you're losing a really good potential influence in the sessions. And it's interactive because the young people can annotate and you can play games on it. So if there's a tech failure, say the Wi-Fi drops out, talk about what you're going to do. Talk about who else would be in the space, whether you want the door to your bedroom closed or not, that kind of thing. Talk to the parent. Is your child the kind of one that likes to have a few snacks, a few biscuits or a bit of popcorn or a glass of water, or what do they normally like? Because it's good to have that kind of set up around them. And again, things like how far away is the bathroom in the house? Is it up the stairs? So we're looking at a 5-minute break if they need to use the bathroom. Think just general kind of conversations. You could ask the child in the first session to write a do not disturb sign as an activity, and remembering this pace, and the parent is the same. This pace is for us. It's Dan Hughes's playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, empathy. Those are the things we're trying to build on as adults around children. And if the child's getting agitated, and we can say, do you want to go and stamp your feet all the way to the other side of the room and come stamping back again? We need to know if that is a safe, clear space. So you can talk about to the parents, what kind of space is it? So these are the things, as I said, if you've worked with children and families for a long time, well, look, you can probably skip this. But basically, number one, every day, every moment, even me recording this now for you, it's all about connection. And it's, you think, well, how could you describe connection? It's intention. Yeah, it's an intentional wish to be with the other person. And as a counsellor, we're looking at making that space safe and, remember, playful, acceptance, curiosity, and for the child to be curious too, and empathy. So all those other things, like pacing. If you're someone that talks really quickly, like me, you can intentionally slow down. If you're nervous on Zoom, say the first couple of months while you're doing this, you might have a little bit of, short breaths. And so again, intentionally say to yourself, what do I need? Make a little post-it note, have it next to your laptop. So the routine. So I believe that when children come to a consultation with you in person, they have, if you notice, they have a little routine of where they go in the room, what they look at, how they scan the room, do they have a favorite toy and all that. Well, that predictability and routine can be created for each child. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. So we do need to work out how, especially if you're a play therapist, how you bring in those child-led more free opportunities. So that's something to think about. And also the breathing in and breathing out time. So the intensity of doing something together, and then the child might have a few minutes where they're drawing, that kind of thing. But that breathing in and out is something teachers understand, that the child needs that rhythm of activity and quiet. And again, visual images. See if you can get visual images which will convey the kind of conversations this particular client you're working with might find helpful. So they're all metaphors. So that might be helpful to think about, looking for metaphors and taking a photo of something. And then, like, you might take a photo of a magic wand that you've got in your, play toolkit, and you might then add it to a PowerPoint, and then, you could show that magic wand on the screen and say, wouldn't it be great if we had a magic wand for every problem that we had, So we need to find out what kind of little encourages and feedback things we can work with each individual young person, child. And just remember that if the session is mainly you asking questions, that's not connection. There's a free video at the Dulwich Centre website that might be helpful. And it unpacks a bit of this looking for connection. They've got some question prompts there on the left, favorite dishes, and all that kind of thing. But they've just got some interesting ideas. Sabine Vermeer, and it's about 12 minutes. So depending on the quirkiness of the young person, I might put one of the toys on my head, at the beginning of the session. So that's part of my routine with that child. I'll do something a bit strange. Or it might be that I'll put one earring in and not the other, and they have to guess what's different today. Now I've got I'm big on humor, so there's a link there to talking about how humor is really important. So I can send you those links separately. So the playfulness can be all sorts of things. So we've got a magic book. So I'll just show you the magic book. Yeah. So it's a colouring in book. But I say to the child, okay, what magic word do you know? And they might say, oh, abracadabra. I'll say, okay, say abracadabra, we'll see what happens. Abracadabra. Hey, it's all coloured in. Well done. What's another one? Escobar. What? So again, resources like that you have in session work really well online too. And movement breaks are really helpful. So get creative. Like I said, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get up, I'm going to go and stamp my feet to get out all the anger, all the way to the corner of the room over there and come back. And we can do charades. So definitely, I've got a YouTube 2 or 3 minute presentation about using charades. So you could find that on YouTube, put my name in and then put charades. And then you could you can invent it. Just say, okay, I'm going to mime something in charades, and you have to guess what it is. And I might pretend I'm climbing. And they say, oh, you're climbing a ladder. Yay, okay, your turn. So you can buy resources for charades. And again, they'll find their own way of visually sharing with you what it was. So if you can present, say, this slide, so you photo the resource, you take a photo of the resources you've got, and then you can put that on the screen and say, okay, choose one. Don't tell me what it is that you've chosen. Choose one, and then act out. So I have to guess which one you chose. So if it was the in-person training, we'd be having a little break now. Now, this therapeutic connection, this is like soul to soul, yeah? And it's your personal style. Your theoretical modality might influence how the connection looks and feels for the child. Your intentions might be subtly coming across, and children often shut down if they feel too pressured. If they sense that your intention in this session is to get them talking more about what happens at dad's house, for example, they might be a bit wary of that and shut down. And one of the things that's really great is to kind of have a to and fro feeling where the child senses that, yeah, okay, sometimes you're putting ideas out there and sometimes they are. So make sure you do that. You kind of have times where you say, well, what would you like to do next? And also the birth order. I'm doing some PD around that, delivering some training around that with the Sydney Centre for Creative Change later in the year. That's really quite significant because if you're a firstborn yourself and you're working with a firstborn child, you'll have a lot in common that, you know, you obviously you don't share what happened to you when you were a kid, but you'll understand possibly quite a number of the problems the child has because you've had that lived experience. And if you're a middle child, likewise, and the child that you're working with is middle child. And also temperament. So there's 4 temperaments: choleric, melancholic, sanguine, and phlegmatic. So that's something worth looking at, because if you are a sanguine person, which means, you know, like a little butterfly hopping from flower to flower, you might find it quite challenging with a phlegmatic person that feels quite heavy and not someone that has depression, but someone who is slow to do things. So if you understand the child's temperament and your own, you can have more compassion and acceptance around how you work together. Now, I don't know, this isn't a truism, it's not absolutely true, but with younger children, think like an occupational therapist. So get active, get them doing things, and be like a dog, have that real playfulness, yeah? But with older children, young people, think like an alien. You know, this alien comes, and so you're sitting there and you can't assume very much about this 14-year-old, even if you've had lots of information intake from the parents, because they will keep things guarded themselves. So you'll have to kind of be an alien that's visiting and soaking everything in. Or, you know, be like a cat. And it's actually something that's really helpful to parents that are struggling is you say, well, look, with your 5-year-old, maybe you need to kind of be like the dog. And then with your 13-year-old, be more like a cat, you know, those kind of things. This is a nice one. It's just, if you look, put stretching cats on in the YouTube, you'll find this one. It's really good first couple of minutes. It ends with a lion roaring, so I always stop it before that. So I get the young person or child to kind of do some stretching with me, and I'll do all the stretching too. It's really fun and very easy to copy. Got a little technical glitch there. I can't seem to get off the thing, so let me just again, things will go wrong in the setting up of things. Be patient with yourself. Say, oh, this might be a good time to go have a little drink. I'm having trouble with something, you know. So in terms of working with children, you know, it's really great to start with Carl Rogers, non-judgmental, present moment. And the interesting thing he says is that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. That's really helpful with parents who will be, women, the mums often are filled with guilt. Dads might be just angry that these things are happening. So talk to them about accepting yourself where you're at today on your parenting journey, given your own childhood, given the complexity of the situation in your life. Accept where you are right now, and that will allow you to know what little things might need to change. And, you know, again, Carl Rogers, therapy has to do with the relationship and has relatively little to do with techniques or theory. Now, you know, he was saying that before the research on it was done. I believe it is the the realness of the therapist in the relationship, which is the most important elements. That's that authenticity that you'll hear Dr. Gabor Mate talk about, the realness, the authenticity. And it is when the therapist is natural and spontaneous that he seems to be most effective. So that's all about being congruent. It's a crucial factor. Eugene Gendlin is a great person to look at YouTube, watch how he does it. He and Carl Rogers were colleagues, and they have quite different approaches because the somatic stuff is what Eugene Gendlin took further than Carl Rogers. So children can be hypervigilant about the motivations of adults in their lives after trauma. So you're an adult in their life, they don't know you, so they might be quite cautious, even though they might do the little smile and be polite or something like that. Just remember that inside they might be going through, I wonder if this person is actually safe. So I will leave this for you to pause and read a bit more on your own. So, you know, in a counselling room, I have a big poster up with the different emotions. It's a bit hard to see this, but anyway, and you know, this kimochi one's a particularly good one. I found children can really relate to that. So you think, okay, how am I going to do the psych-ed around emotional awareness and things like that? So how do you translate and bring the things that you've got around the room into the session online? Well, you do it by creating a PowerPoint and having practical things you can show the child. So again, if you're not really experienced at making a PowerPoint, just go onto YouTube, how to make good PowerPoints and get things happening. So if you want to put some awesome little images in there that are in the PowerPoint app itself, you can go to Insert, Icons, and then explore some design ideas and format the background. These are some of the stock images under the label of stickers. So if you put Insert, stock images from the PowerPoint stock and then click stickers, you'll get these kind of awesome pictures, and then you'd add your little bit. When did you last feel? And you can share, oh, when did I last feel? Oh, what about this one? You know, the pizza delivery sent the wrong pizza. Or things like this. What 3 feelings have you been having? I never say, how are you feeling, full stop, in that. I like to invite a bit more of a description or variety. So Here's a little screenshot of what you'd be doing. Stock images and then icons. And these are the kind of things I have on my PowerPoints with children and young people. I'll say to them, especially those that own a phone, I'll say, hey, how does your phone be fully functioning and working well in the morning? Oh, I have it on charge. Oh, do you plug it in or put it on a recharger? Yeah. Oh, okay. What about yourself? Do you plug yourself in at night? And, we can have this is a curious conversation. So what do we need to recharge? I mean, these are existential questions. What 3 toppings are getting you down? How do you get through these difficult emotions? So if they're annoyed and almost at the rage point about some issue that's happening at home, well, how do you manage that? Do you go to your room and slam the door? Kind of, throw the pillow around? What do you do? Because each child has their own unique response, and that's that in PACE, that's the curiosity. And what are 3 toppings on the pizza? Other things in your life that are lovely? And tell me a story about them. Again, I intersperse my PowerPoints with these kind of videos. So again, they're in the PowerPoint. Insert a video from the stock. And I'll say, because the person seeing this might think, oh, I'm being helped up. But I can say, who have you been helping this week? So stock images, go to videos and choose the one you want in that will insert into your PowerPoint. Here's another one. So I might say, oh, look, let's take a 5-minute break and you leave this on. Yeah. A new client comes to the counselling and you can have a welcome to the counselling page on the PowerPoint. If you find out that the intake that your child is really interested in a topic, have that on the cover. So again, these images are just from the stock images in the PowerPoint. This helps me say to young people that come along, well, these are the kind of things I do in counselling. I'm not sure what your other counsellor did, but I might be looking at the balance of the tricky things in life and the good things, or I might be finding out if you've got 3 problems, which is the biggest one, middle-sized one, small one. We might do some games, noughts and crosses. I've got some other games I like to do. I'm a bit competitive, so when it's playtime, we might draw a graph of how things have been up and down this year. I might ask you about your thoughts. We might see if you're achieving the goals you want from counselling. So I'm not a big, I don't believe in prioritizing goal conversations, but we want to make sure that the young person or child is getting something from our work together. We might do some drawing. We might do some mindful breathing, never more than 2 minutes. So nothing too drastic. You might have some light bulb moments, or I might say to you, oh, I'm wondering, and we can share these light bulb moments that sometimes arise out of the conversations. And are we on target? How are we going? And then this is when I have it right at the beginning after those introductory ones. Are you ready to begin? So again, kind of getting to know your questions online can be fun because you can get a few images up that are standard ones and say, well, what's your favorite food? Where do you like to go in the summer holidays? Good to have some kind of list of needs or values, especially for the older children, and to be able to say things like, can you maybe pick half a dozen things from this list of what's important to you and just tell me why. So if they chose honesty and put, maybe they didn't even know what authenticity was, we can look it up on the phone. We can Google it, we want the backstory. So find a list of needs or you can just write your own up. This image is from my first book, A Counselor's Companion, because to know what's important to your client is really helpful. They might say teamwork, family, kindness. Most of you will have worked with the bear cards. On the right, you can see where if I'm going to be doing a bear cards session, as soon as the child walks in, I'll have all the bear cards out there, and they go, "Oh, what's this?" I'll say, "Well, I don't want you to use words today for the first 10 minutes. I want you to go there and pick half a dozen of those cards that represent how things have been this week in between sessions. You can find 10 if you want, but 6 would be great." And they go and they'll choose those. And they don't have to tell me about them. I can say, "Can you put them in order?" And then I might say, you know, "This afternoon, what have you got lined up?" Often parents organise some kind of treat after a session, and they'll choose the card of how they hope to feel at the end of the session. So you can get your bear cards on e-cards. You purchase them and then they're available. But again, you can just photograph them and use them, but you can get e-cards. Same with strength cards. So I have this just on a PowerPoint. I don't need to buy the strength cards, right, that are for online use. I can just use this. What are your top 3 strengths? And also that anything that's a strength is a value. Just remember that. So if someone says, "Oh, I'm patient," well, that means it's a value. I'll say, well, if I say, "Why is patience important to you?" they'll tell me a story about their values. So the feelings wheel, it's great. I have a couple of different ones. Just download them. I have them laminated in person, but they're really helpful for children 11 and 12 and over instead of the kimochis. Really good to have those kind of resources that you can hold up to the screen. So you can see this is 2-dimensional. But if I say, you know, "Has this week got that bad?" you know, really, or has it been leaning more towards feeling good? What kind of week have you had? You can see that it's kind of it becomes a bit more 3-dimensional than the PowerPoint. Good to have tools about anger. You can download the one on the left from my website free of charge and have that on your PowerPoint. Really good to talk about anger and what's leading up to it. I'm not a big advocate of the anger iceberg. I talk about what's rumbling, what's moving before there's a big explosion. And because anger is an act, it's not actually an emotion. It's a secondary emotion. Anger is something you know. You can either hear it, someone's tone of voice has changed, or they shout, or you can see it. They have their fists clenched or jaw tight, or they hit the table, and you can see them move their limbs. This is one I have as well. I've got a YouTube. So if you put anger and then my name in the YouTube, you'll come to a little video of me talking about the anger trophy. Because a child of 8 who has an anger problem, according to the parents, it's as though they're saying, he's got the anger trophy. But actually, if you say to the child, overall, this year, who else in your family might win the trophy back off you, or something like that. Or, you can say, when you were first born, did you have the trophy then? Who had the trophy then? So the thing to do is to have a few little things that you can use that bring about a I've got this problem again. Again, make allowances for when you can't transition from one thing to another. Just stop the share, go into the back and move the slide forward. on your own. It sometimes happens after you're playing a video or if a video starts to play. So again, this is very helpful to have an image like this. So, you know, when that person came around the playground again after what had happened 3 months ago, you saw them, they've come back to school. Part of you will be having one of these kind of responses. You'll have the fear, oh my gosh, what will happen today? Am I going to have this? Am I going to fight them? Am I going to quickly sneak away and hide? Or am I just going to stay very still and hope they don't come near me? But inside, there'll be something going on, and we can talk about that. Other things that we can do is, you know, ask the child, have you got a special toy that you'd like to share with me, especially when they're new? You can ask if they want you to do some magic, or do they have any magic tricks? You could create a chatterbox. You could do a whiteboard game. So there's some magic there. If you go again on YouTube, that's called the 7 magic card trick. I won't do it now because I'm wanting to keep this quite short. There's a paper clip trick. I do some of these in the trainings with the Sydney Centre for Creative Change, the Playful Therapy ones. These are things you can do on the whiteboard. So you can do dots and boxes. You set up a series of little dots, and then everyone has a turn. And the idea is to block a box off and put your initial in it. And then once you've done that, you go again. So if you're not sure how to play dots and boxes, go onto YouTube, put that in the search engine. That's a really fun tool. And if you've got, say, 10 minutes for a game, you just make it bigger. So you make it 10 by 10. Or you can find, you know, smaller words that are in a big word. So in summary, we offer a unique relationship, and it's not diminished because it's online. We can still communicate. I'm here, I hear you, I see you, I'm willing to understand, and I care. So yeah, we need to have that presence, and it needs to be a skilled presence. So at the beginning online, it won't be as skilled. Just as when you first, you know, began counselling in person, your presence, it wasn't as automatic and natural when you first started out. So it's the same with Zoom. It can feel a bit clunky to start with. Don't let that put you off. We can collaborate online. We can use our curiosity. We can be authentic. And so the children feel capable and understood, and they feel important and accepted. And when children and young people feel better about themselves through this therapeutic connection that we've got, the shame that they've been experiencing will shift, and they might find themselves more able to share what they're experiencing and act in more self-enhancing ways. Good to get some e-resources from places like Headspace. They've got some great stuff. Again, nothing wrong with showing an 8-minute video online to a young person that's struggling with a particular topic. So Headspace have got lots of those. This would be more for, you know, the older children, 10 and over, but there's some videos around what things might feel like. So depending on your client, of course, you know, check in with the parents that if you're going to be doing something like this. So you might say, look, next week I'm going to show them this link. Do you want to have a look at it? You might even want to introduce it yourself to your child. Let me know. And then they know that they've had a topic with you. The child's had a topic with you that might have been a bit of a struggle, something they've been struggling with in the family home for a couple of years until the other parent moved out, perhaps. Again, you can take, excuse me, you can take a client to supervision online and use the whiteboard, and each person can type in there some ideas they've got of how to respond and work with a client. So you might have questions. Of course, this is a recording, so you can't let me know, but these are the kind of questions you might have, and you're more than welcome to send me any of your questions to my website on my contact page. So kimbillington.com.au. And also think about, what are the books that have really helped you in your counselling practice? For me, it was Dibs in Search of Self, and putting together a book has been helpful for me for, to pass forward some of the ideas of my practice. And so think about yourself. What's been influential in your career working with families? I do have a couple of resources you can purchase on my website. There's one with illustrations, 35 illustrations, and this cover one. So it's using all metaphors. So, for example, this one would be, sometimes in life you're being dragged somewhere you don't want to go. Sometimes you really want to go somewhere, but you have to wait until the person says, I'll drive you there, or whatever. But if you can have a chance to influence your life, what kind of things would you be doing where you have the power and influence to do those things? What is it you like to do? So this little e-resource is downloadable from our website, $7.50 it is. And there are my two books. The one on the right is the one for child counsellors, and the one on the left is more for new counsellors that want to hear about how other counsellors have got into their roles, what kind of different theoretical approaches and jobs they've had. And then there's one chapter where I'm interviewed about how to work with parents. I hope you found this helpful. And yeah, I'll be doing module 2 next.